The Biden administration granted a very telling interview to Reuters in which Biden officials were quoted saying, you know what, we're kind of embarrassed about what's happening in Afghanistan, but we're going to try to say as little as possible about it because we don't think that the American people really care about it. In other words, as long as we can get the Americans out, Americans aren't worried about what's happening in Afghanistan. Americans are, the assumption is, narrow, provincial, insular, and so this too shall pass. Now, I interpret this interview with Reuters in a slightly more dark light than what appears on the surface. I think what the Biden administration is telegraphing through Reuters to the media is stop covering Afghanistan so much. You're kind of going overboard here. You're keeping the story going. You're on our side, remember? And so it's a clue to the media to get off this topic. Remember, after all, the media has been doing its best to present this in the best possible light in all kinds of ways. Of course, the classic statement, which I think Clarissa Ward has taken back somewhat. She was out there, CNN reporter saying things like, yeah, they're chanting debt to America back there, but, it's, they seem nice. Now later she said, no, they came up to whip us and they were doing all these atrocities on the streets. So there was a little backpedaling there from Clarissa Ward. I think she deserves some credit for that. But her original statement reminded me of these sort of, it was CNN, MSN, the mostly peaceful riots. And behind you can see, people being dragged out of cars, being beaten, cops being assaulted, churches burning. That's okay. It's mostly peaceful around here as far as I can see. So what you have is MSNBC and CNN have now become sort of like the Taliban's voice in America. And the strange thing about it is, think about it, the Taliban. The Taliban, these are people. Once ISIS came up with the idea of throwing gays off buildings, it was sort of the ISIS strategy, the Taliban came up with its own counter. It's called dropping the walls on top of gays. And so you'd think that the media, which is sort of heavily populated by gays, would be like, we don't like this stuff. We would not like a wall dropped on my head. But they feel like it's in Afghanistan. I'm not in Afghanistan. I'm in Milwaukee. I don't have to worry about it. So this is the media. Now, very interestingly, let's turn to social media for a minute, because very interestingly, the Taliban has an account. They're on Twitter. They're tweeting away. Now, think about it. They just not only attempted a coup, they did a coup. They didn't attempt an armed insurrection. They did an armed insurrection. So this is not democracy. They didn't count the votes. They stormed through each city. They stormed through Kabul. Now, aren't they violating Twitter guidelines?
Yes, they are.
They obviously are. But Trump is off the platform, Taliban leader tweeting away. The Washington Post, and this is really how the media ties into social media. Here's the Washington Post, because I think they realize that something's up here. Something needs explanation. So listen to their explanation. Quote, title of the article, Taliban rarely breaks social media rules with, quote, strikingly sophisticated techniques. So here's the headline. I'm not making this up, guys. It's right here. Apparently the Taliban is abiding by the Twitter rules. I guess what that means is they're using all the right pronouns. Z, zim, zer. They're apparently being advised by a social media company. And so I'm gonna give you the money quote here. This is good. Think about it. This is while the Taliban's hunting for people who supported the U.S., basically killing them in the street. You have bodies lying in Kandahar and Kabul. But, says the Washington Post, and of course they always quote some unnamed analysts who are essentially fake, completely made up. But here we go. The answer, analysts say, to the apparent contradiction here, why is Trump off the platform but the Taliban on it? The answer, analysts say, may simply be that Trump's posts for years challenged platform rules against hate speech and inciting violence. Today's Taliban, by and large, does not. This is the Washington Post with a totally straight face. So what we're dealing with here, this is just absolute dishonesty on a cosmic scale. And of course, Twitter, Twitter doesn't even bother to provide explanations. You've just got this kind of robotic Jack Dorsey sitting around there, basically doing his homeless seance. He's surrounded by all these, clowns who are like, let's throw Trump off Twitter, let's keep the Taliban on. They're after all a legitimate government. They did win, they did win the war. So this is the state state of our institutions, and it's a sorry state. And as we look abroad, we are more than ever convinced that the problems really lie and are most serious here at home. So yeah, I'm not calling for America to withdraw from the world. We can't and we won't, but we need to attend to some very serious institutional and moral problems that we face of legitimacy, of honesty, of basic decency here right at home in the United States.